The Good Friday qualifying crowd was a record for Mount Panorama, and it's growing today to what looks almost certain to be a brand new record for the circuit for the weekend, as some people claim their vantage points for the entire weekend. And here's Neil Crompton.
Riders on the starting line for the Western Underwriters 1000 over 10 laps, 61.72 kilometres of the Mount Panorama course, and a star-studded field including Ron Bolden right there on bike number 59, Andrew Johnson on the 500cc Grand Prix Honda, together with Paul Lewis from Victoria on bike number 37. The 16 is in there as well, John Wood. Bolden with a time in practice of 2:19.26. The flag has dropped. Away they go, and on the right-hand side of screen, number 7 it is. And Andrew Johnson on the brand new Grand Prix Honda streaks into the lead with Paul Lewis tucked in second place. John Wood in third as they streak up the mountain for the first time. Somebody goes off on the escape road and all the mad confusion. And off towards the top. Grand Prix motorcycles having their first run, competitive run around Bathurst for this Grand Prix Easter meeting. And this is going to be a very, very interesting race because it's a shakedown for the 1983 500cc Grand Prix. For many of these riders, they'll be testing bikes, they'll be ensuring that their preparation is 100% correct.
McPhillamy parked for the first time, and it's Johnson on the Honda in the lead, with Paul Lewis right behind him on the Suzuki RGB 500 over Skyline, and it's Lewis clawing at Johnson's tail. His knees right out, scraping the track, feeling his way around the circuit, and they've just left the rest of the field for dead.
Third place there was Gary Coleman. And on to Conrod Straight for the first time in this 10-lap Western Underwriters 1000 event. And these bikes are going to be geared and well and truly capable of reaching speeds up to 300 kilometres per hour. In fact, looking at Paul Lewis's gearing chart as he makes a challenge down the main straight, incredible speed out of these bikes. They'll well and truly aviate as they go over the top of the humps, and here they come making their first run down underneath the bridge, and Lewis's bike capable of 300 kilometres an hour plus. On the inside, bike number 37, Paul Lewis Victoria. Bike number 7 in the lead at the moment is Andrew Johnson on the Works Honda, having its first race meeting ever in 1983, and at the end of lap number 1, it's Johnson leading. Lewis in second position, and an enormous gap back to our third place man,
who's Ron Bolden, 4.5 seconds behind, and behind him, Rob Phillips is right on his tail. As Johnson, there they go, as Johnson and Lewis start to charge up Mountain Straight, the two most determined riders in Australian motorcycle racing.
Whistling over Castrol and through to McPhillamy, and it's still Andrew Johnson pushing the Grand Prix Honda to its absolute limit, with Paul Lewis tucked right in behind as they go over the top of Skyline, through the left and right, and this tiny little road racer from Victoria is really giving the Works Honda rider plenty to think about at the moment. Just 22 years of age, hopes to go to Europe in the latter part of 1983, certainly for 1984. There's the gap back to our third place rider.
Rob Phillips.
Rob Phillips has got through on Ron Bolden, then John Wood there on bike number 16.
Down Conrod Straight they come, aiming for 300 kilometres an hour, skyrocketing down. Look at Johnson opening the lead on Lewis, but Lewis now starting to haul him in. Lewis only 44 kilograms in weight, and it's showing on Conrod Straight, tucked right in behind Johnson. He'll go for a braking manoeuvre.
Under brakes, and it's Lewis having a look through on the inside, but decides that this is not the right occasion to do it, and he settles in second place as they come up now to end lap number 2 in the 10-lap race. Lewis has been experimenting with a number of different jet settings and also a variety of different back tyres and final ratio settings in the gearbox, and he firmly believes that his bike is quicker than this Works Honda, a bike that was only freighted in from Japan some 10 days ago.
And a new unofficial lap record, 2:14.8 on Andrew Johnson. That's something like 4.5 seconds under the lap record standing that Greg Pretty, the South Australian, set in 1981. Up out of the cutting and heading up towards Reed Park. It's Johnson in the lead. There he is, Johnson in the lead with Lewis tucked in right behind him again. Imagine slingshotting yourself through McPhillamy Park, totally blind corner. You've got to trust the flag marshals and trust the riders in front of you that there's not going to be an obstruction in the middle of the track. Now down through the gears, heading towards the dipper. Second gear corner, and look at him through the dipper. Paul Lewis just picks up Johnson.
And some great shots from the Channel 028 helicopter as those two riders come plunging down the mountain. There's third place man, and that's Rob Phillips. Further back in fourth place, we had Ron Bolden on the last count, and he's still being tailed there by John Wood.
Bolden's on his 500cc Yamaha. He also has a 750cc bike available to him, but his 500 proved quicker in yesterday's practice. Also, the 500 had a small jetting problem, and Bolden is keen to use this race to test his machine for tomorrow's Australian Grand Prix. Is now side by side, Paul Lewis and Andrew Johnson once again. Johnson, the lighter machine, but the heavier rider, and he outbrakes Lewis every time. Lewis doesn't have an answer on the brakes.
And it's interesting, you know, because Lewis actually gets back as far as first gear on that last corner and the one they're coming up to at the moment, Hell Corner. And as we looked on his gearing charts prior to this race, Lewis's bike capable of 132 kilometres per hour just in first gear.
This is the best Grand Prix racing that we've seen at Mount Panorama since the epic duel in 1979 when Graham Crosby, John Woodley and Ron Bolden swapped the lead for 20 laps. This is really flying between Lewis and Johnson, as now Rob Phillips opens a lead on Ron Bolden, who's dropped back to fifth position by the looks of it, behind John Wood. Lap six.
And Lewis's bike that time fishtailing as it came around the top of McPhillamy and then down through Skyline once again. And these two riders pushing both machines to the absolute limit.
And Lewis this time hanging back a bit, perhaps deliberately, to get a better slingshot onto the main straight. If you can get through Forest's Elbow well onto the main straight, you can really pick up anything up to 5 to 10 kilometres an hour down the chute.
Here's the battle between Andrew Johnson and Paul Lewis as they absolutely rocket past one of the slower bikes.
And this time Lewis is closer as he comes up to the second hump.
Manages to keep his bike on the ground, whereas Johnson's bike was up in the air, and he goes through. Oh yes, Paul Lewis did it quite nicely there. And here comes Johnson.
Coming up to the last lap. And Lewis, pulling a huge wheelie, gives away first place to Andrew Johnson.
Well, Johnson was cagey on that time. Used his brakes wisely, cut through on the inside, and snuck underneath Paul Lewis as he aviated the RGB 500 Suzuki.
I think that was less showmanship and a mistake on Lewis's part. I think he really just gassed it up too much, got the wheel up.
Well, one of the problems that he had was the fact that he's gone for a gear ratio, which gives him a high speed on Conrod, but it means that the bike is very difficult to control in first gear. And that particular corner is a corner that he uses first on. Less than a lap to go for Andrew Johnson and Paul Lewis as they absolutely fight their way around the mountain, reaching the heights of 850 metres at the top of the mountain, then plunging back down once again, whistling through the trees. That's Johnson. Bike number 7.
And where's Lewis?
Seems to be a few metres back. And there he is, not too far behind, but with half a lap to go, I don't know, but it looks as though Andrew Johnson might just hang on to this one by the narrowest of margins. Lewis looking a little untidy that time through the S's. And through the dipper. Lewis just dropping back a little bit now.
And here's the news. Paul Lewis has set a new outright lap record officially at Mount Panorama. 2 minutes, 13.62 seconds, 0.2 of a second under Graham Crosby's lap record of 3 years ago. Well done, Paul Lewis. Superb.
And here they come, whistling out of Forest Elbow and down the straight for the last time. They'll be rocketing the bikes as they come over the first hump. Checkered flag is being prepared. Number 7, Andrew Johnson. I think he's got this one. Number 37, Paul Lewis, as they go into the braking area and around the left-hander. An enormous crowd, and Lewis has gone off into the sand traps.
Andrew Johnson gets the checkered flag, but there's Lewis's bike down. Lewis struggling with the machine, trying to get it up. It's still got power. If you can get it moving, you can pull a place. Now, what sort of damage is he doing to his clutch, getting it out of there, realising that the Australian Grand Prix is on tomorrow? They're going to have to go inside that bike to have a look at it. And Paul Lewis has stalled the bike so close to the checkered flag. He's down on Murray's corner. There goes Ron Bolden through. And now little Paul's going to start to push to the checkered flag. Oh, good stuff, Paul Lewis, nonetheless. That's a brave heart from Paul Lewis to try and get the bike to the flag. That was Rob Phillips who just went through, but Paul just cannot do it. And there's our second place man, number 32, Robbie Phillips. Poor Paul Lewis. Absolutely exhausted as he pushes this bike up, and a man who is just the smallest of Grand Prix road races. And worse still, suffering from flu in the last couple of days, and not a well man at all. And it's all over for Lewis. Can you blame him for doing that? He gave it everything he had, a magnificent sportsman, and what an absolute shame to see it all thrown away on the last corner of the last lap. The result that Paul Lewis will probably forever regret, the Western Underwriters 1000 at Bathurst, won by Andrew Johnson for Rob Phillips, with John Wood third, and Ron Bolden, the defending Australian Grand Prix champion.